Today on Around Kansas, we catch up with Deb Goodrich in between her travels around the Midwest. Next, in our wildlife segment, we take an exploration of Kansas with a sneak peek at some of Nick Abbott's recent documentary. Then we finish our series of On the Front Porch with Kyle Bauer and Tom Holmquist. Today, it's all about the Smolin Cowboys. Next, Ron Wilson entertains us before we close out with Deb as she reflects back on the Trails to Rails event at Fort Wallace.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Good Wednesday morning. I'm Deb Goodrich. Welcome to Around Kansas. I'm sitting on this beautiful deck of our friends Barb and Don Bland and McPherson. Remember, there's no fear in McPherson. And this was a great place to stay and go to the state fair. And I got to go to the state fair for a couple of days. Jane and Cecil Pierce from out of Fort Wallace. We manned the Wallace County booth, and then also I did a few presentations for the Santa Fe Trail, and got to visit with folks on behalf of the Santa Fe Trail. So that was a really great time. I cannot brag enough on the folks that run the state fair for how clean they kept everything, just how perfectly smooth everything ran. Absolutely amazing. Kudos, everybody. I didn't get to see much of the fair. I was really busy and I didn't get to see much of it, but just what an amazing thing. Now, one person that I did run into was Kelly Wirtz. Can you see this, people? His brand new CD. And yes, it is entitled Crawdad, and that is a crawdad on the front there. So Kelly, of course, world-renowned musician, headed to Winfield. So the good folks at Winfield had him at the state fair promoting that. And of course, Winfield starts like today. Is that awesome or what? So I don't know. We've been on the road so much. If I'm going to be able to get to Winfield, every now and then I have to stay at home and actually get some work done. So I hope to. But we just got back. Dr. Jake and I just got back from a week with the Order of the Indian Wars. So we were out in eastern Colorado at Bent's Fort and at the Sand Creek Massacre site and some of those other really wonderful historic sites and really important sites like Sand Creek, a very, very important site, a sad chapter in the nation's history for sure, but also a very important story. So if you're out in that neck of the woods, stop in Fort Wallace and then go on and visit there in eastern Colorado. A couple of things that I want to mention too that are coming up. Again, we have our event at Fort Wallace, the Smoky Hill Trail Association Conference, coming up in October, just a month from today. So hope to see you all there. That's going to be a fantastic conference. Just what an incredible lineup. One of my friends that's speaking is Brenda Culbertson, and you all have seen Brenda on Around Kansas before. I've shared her books, and you've seen her stargazing events at Washburn or other locales, and just an amazing person. Pauline Sharp, who's speaking on Lucy Eads, her grandmother, who was the chief of the Kaw Nation, the leader of the Kaw Nation. So so many wonderful presenters, and we would love to have you here. And speaking of what we've got going on at Fort Wallace, this is a little fundraising that I am doing. I don't often take this platform for fundraising, but I think this is really important. Our friend Melissa Rao, who did our sculpture of Roman nose, and if you're in the Topeka area, you've seen many of her sculptures. The Fairlawn Plaza has those every year. Her elves, Gary Clark, our beloved zoo director in Topeka, she made a little elf out of him, and just an amazing artist. And she did Wild Bill Hickok that we have on loan there at the museum. Amelia Earhart, Arthur Capper. She's done some incredible historic figures. So she is doing Dr. Theophilus Turner for us. And if you watch the show, you know that Thoth's Dragon, the docudrama that we did, is about the life and discovery that Dr. Turner made of a plesiosaur out in Logan County while he was the post surgeon at Wallace. Well, she is making a life-size sculpture of him to be added to our museum. and just message me if you'd like to be a part of making that happen. That makes the whole story come full circle, the science and the medicine that those guys were. So be happy to have you join us in that. Stay with us. Another great show today.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
In 1821, a trade route was opened from Missouri in the United States across prairies and mountains to Mexico. In 2021, we will mark 200 years of epic conflicts and grand adventures, larger-than-life personalities, and sweeping landscapes. Join us on an historic journey. The Santa Fe Trail lives on.
Find us on social media or santafetrail.org.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff, like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
This segment brought to you by the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center in Oakley.
Since this is our wildlife segment, I thought I would move over and show you our wildlife this morning. Look at that owl. It could fly off at any minute, but probably not since he's plastic. Wildlife is all about getting outdoors and exploring Kansas, and so our friend Nick Abbott, who did the commercial for the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, does tons of documentaries on how beautiful the state of Kansas is, and he's done a documentary, Exploration Kansas, and we hope there's more to come. And this has our friends Jim Matson, Mike Everhart, and Rex Buchanan. So we're going to share the link on the bottom of the screen so you can see the whole thing, but this is just a sampling of what you'll see.
Gyp hills are a very different environment. They're much older than mostly what we've been talking about. These are rocks that were deposited during the Permian period of geologic history, a couple 100 million years ago. During that time period, that area that's covered by the Gyp hills is sort of an embayment that water could flow into, and at times that water, the source of that water got cut off, that water would evaporate and would leave behind rock units that geologists call, for obvious reasons, evaporites. So things like, probably the best known one is salt. But gypsum and other kinds of rocks get deposited at the bottom of that old embayment, and they underlie a lot of Kansas. Now, in some places they're in the subsurface. That salt is mined in Hutchinson and Lyons and Canopolis. But where you see those rocks exposed at the surface is the Red Hills in that area down around, particularly Medicine Lodge and on to the west. There, the Gyp hills cap those hills. Again, it's gypsum that when it was deposited, those are flat-lying rocks. Differential erosion then removed rock in between the hills, so it sculpted these hills. What's really making them striking is partly the way the formations look, but also their color. That, in addition to being known as the Gyp hills, it's also known as the Red Hills, because very many of those rocks that are deposited, not so much the gypsums, but the siltstones and the sandstones, are stained red by iron oxide. So if you drive throughout those hills, they have a deep red, very striking color. So you get this combination of butte and mesa topography from the gypsum that is capping the tops of those hills, and then the stained iron oxide color just forms a very dramatic landscape. Really, in many respects, looks more like Arizona and New Mexico than it does Kansas. Clark County is kind of spectacular, partly because there's deep erosional features there, and so a steep-sided canyon. Especially if you come into Clark County State Lake from the west, it's like you don't even know this exists, and all of a sudden the country just drops off and forms this canyon. The other thing that's really spectacular in a geologic sense about Clark County State Lake is how many different units you can see in place in a small amount of area there. Some hills that are capped by Ogallala Formation not very far away, along with all these Permian rocks that are there, and I have to go back and check, but I think there are even some Cretaceous things that crop out there as well. So really within the space of almost sometimes a few hundred yards, you can see 200 million years worth of geologic history. Kansas, has this reputation as being fairly flat and featureless and not very, interesting geologically. And certainly there are parts of the high plains in the rest of the state where I'd say, yeah, I can understand that reputation. What I would say to people is get off the big highways, get off of I-70, get off the turnpike, open your eyes, take a little bit of time, and see what's out there.
The prairie is kind of an acquired taste. We don't have huge mountains, we don't have ocean beaches and whatnot, but the prairie is appreciated in its details, in its fine details. And sometimes you have to actually get down at that level in order to appreciate it fully, appreciate all the variety of pollinating insects and other insects that live there, the variety of flowering plants, over 800 flowering plant species in Kansas alone, and most of those are prairie species, either tallgrass or shortgrass prairie species. Each one has figured out how to live here. Each one has learned through trial and error and over the millennia what it takes to survive in this place, and each one has valuable lessons to teach us about how we can survive here too.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff, like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
In 1821, a trade route was opened from Missouri in the United States across prairies and mountains to Mexico. In 2021, we will mark 200 years of epic conflicts and grand adventures, larger-than-life personalities, and sweeping landscapes. Join us on an historic journey. The Santa Fe Trail lives on.
Find us on social media or santafetrail.org.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle Bauer. My guest today is Tom Holmquist. We're talking about the Smolin, Kansas area. His ancestors had settled in that Smolin area in the late 1860s. Of course, that area was also the area cattle were being driven up from Texas, and we also had issues with the Native Americans at that point.
There was. This was a completely new experience for these people. They had settled here thinking this was they would get their farm started, and then here would come these herds. We're more familiar with the herds going to Abilene, but that's not entirely true. There were some that went to Salina and others that went to Brookville, but it's right down this I-35 corridor, which where the interstate is today. And so there were occasional times when these cattle would come and they would hear the herds, and they could hear these coming because of the clicking of the horn against each other. And then they would realize that they were in serious problems here. These cattle would come right across their field and destroy their corn or their oats or whatever they had in the field, and the cowboys paid no heed to them, would just go on their way, having destroyed whatever crops were here. One interesting story that I had been told was a woman was alone here. Actually, it was my great-grandmother, and she was here alone at one time. Several cowboys showed up. They had probably delivered their herd and maybe were on their way south, and they had obviously been drinking, and they came to the little sod house that was here. They started riding around, and they shot the one window out of the house. Well, Lavisa, who was her name, she hid under the table with her little Spitz dog. The dog barked and got away from her and got out the door and started to bite at the heels of the cowboys' horses, and one of them shot the little dog. Well, then they went on left, and she went in and found her dog. And she told this story oftentimes at family gatherings and things. And even 70 years later, tears would run down her cheeks at the loss of her dog. But then she would say that the women out there were much more frightened of the cowboys than they ever were of any of the encounters they had with Native Americans.
I was about to ask, well, there would have been Native Americans through the area, because again, it was just settled. They would have been used to centuries of traveling that area.
That's right. This was oftentimes Kansa hunting grounds during that period from the Kansa tribe. And there's one kind of fun story about them. They were camped over here about a half mile south of where Smolin stands today on Dry Creek. And the Matsons, who homesteaded right where Smolin is today, had a baby. It was the first baby born in this community. So word traveled fast, of course, that there was a new baby. And when the people there who were camped along the river, the Native Americans, they heard that this baby had white hair, which is common for Swedish babies, of course, and they wanted to see it. The whole group walked up to where this homestead was, where Smolin is, and asked to see this baby. Well, of course, the Matsons were a bit frightened about this, but they finally gave permission, and so they let them into the dugout, one or two at a time, to see this new baby with the white hair. All of the Native Americans just lined up in a line like we would do today and came in and saw the baby. And once everybody had their turn, they were satisfied and went on back to their camp.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
Trust and leadership are critical to success at Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center in Manhattan. Just ask Coach Bill Snyder.
People of the Regenerative Center do care about others. I've been highly impressed with those people that have that vested interest and try to help people become better. The center really is a wonderful thing here in Manhattan, first of its kind, and we're on the cutting edge of what lies ahead.
Find out more about the trusted leader in stem cell therapy at kansasrmc.com. Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
This segment brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
I read a true story about the trail drives of old that had to do with the way the chuck wagon cook would place the chuck wagon every night on the trail drive. And it got me thinking about some inspirational thoughts and the guidance we need from above. So this is a serious poem titled A Guide from Above. In the history of the West, in the days of old, from the era of cattle drives, a story is told. A chuck wagon accompanied the herd each day so the cowboys could have food along their way. But wherever it was they made camp for the night, the old cook was careful to do one thing just right. He'd look at the night sky from afar and place the wagon with the tongue pointing toward the North Star. Then every morning when daylight came, their northerly direction would be the same. And when they drove those cattle forth, they knew their direction would be true north. In modern life, our directions are sometimes unclear with demands and distractions from life and career. We have no chuck wagons or cattle drives, but there's lots of confusion in the things that we strive. So like the cowboys of old, let's do this just right and follow a heavenly guide every morning and night. Happy trails.
Kim Mannering with Hardy Insurance. Today we will talk about umbrella coverage. Did you know that if you're held liable in any type of accident, the judgment can claim your assets? Please give me a call so we can discuss. 316-945-6733.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
What if sustainability were synonymous with U.S. soy? If energy efficiency, water quality, and soil health help define U.S. soy's value, that future is here, the time is now. To meet end-user demands, the Soybean Checkoff is committing to sustainability that's achievable, worthwhile, and enduring. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Let us help feed your family.
Our Trails to Rails event out in Wallace and Logan counties a couple months ago was a tremendous success with the stagecoaches coming in and just so many activities around that, bringing the Butterfield Overland Dispatch stage line back to life. It was a Herculean effort on the part of a lot of folks. Videographer Brenda Trofe caught some of the highlights of that, and we'd like to share those with you. And there are just too many friends in here to name, and I don't want to leave anybody out. But I will say that the star at the very end is our friend Marla Mack, and I think she's actually the only one that got lines in this clip, but I think you'll really enjoy this incredible scenery from Logan and Wallace counties. Well, folks, it's been a great Wednesday morning. Love having you with us. Thanks for joining us. I'm Deb Goodrich, and I'll see you somewhere around Kansas.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.
My name's Karen Cope, and I have multiple sclerosis. When you have MS, on the outside you look great, but you know what's really going on in the inside is chronic body pain, chronic fatigue. And there's lots of days that I'd wake up and say, oh, please God, help me get through this day. You know, after stem cells, Chloe, my youngest daughter, she was asked by my father-in-law, how's your mom doing? And Chloe said, Grandpa, I've never had a mom like this before. Because she was 8 when I was diagnosed, and she really had no other memory of me but being sick. It's really the simple things that we do as a family, like play cards, and to be able to win at cards. You know, they all laugh because I used to repeat myself and say, what hand are we on? You know, where are we at? And it's just been really a true blessing from God, and we're really thankful.